I never thought I'd sit here, telling the world a story I once prayed would stay buried in the quiet corners of my heart. But sometimes the pain grows so heavy, so corrosive, that the only way to carry it is to release it. My name is Evelyn. I am 38 years old, and for most of my life I carried the scars of betrayal, etched not by strangers, but by those who were supposed to be family. When I look back, I realize that betrayal doesn't always come like thunder crashing through a storm. It often seeps quietly into your life, disguised as love, until one day it shatters everything you thought was safe. I grew up believing in loyalty. My parents had raised me and my younger brother Daniel in a modest home where we didn't have much, but we always had each other. My mother used to tell me, family is the only treasure that never loses value. I clung to those words as if they were gospel. But years later I would discover that treasure can corrode, and sometimes the thieves aren't outsiders. They're sitting at your own dinner table. When I married Michael at 26, it was the happiest day of my life. I still remember how the satin of my wedding gown brushed against the floor of the old church, and how my heart raced as I walked down the aisle. My parents had saved for years to give me something precious: gold jewelry, family heirlooms passed down from my grandmother and mother. They pressed those bangles, necklaces, and rings into my hands with such pride, whispering that they were not just ornaments, but blessings for my marriage, protection for hard times. I didn't just see gold. I saw generations of sacrifice and love condensed into something tangible. When I moved in with Michael, I carried those heirlooms in a small velvet box, locking them inside a drawer in our bedroom. I didn't wear them often, but just knowing they were there gave me a sense of comfort, like a silent reminder of the roots that grounded me. And then came Cassandra, my sister-in-law. Cassandra had married Daniel 2 years before my wedding. At first, she seemed charming, funny even, with her sparkling eyes and the kind of confidence that made everyone lean closer when she spoke. I wanted so badly to believe she was a blessing to my brother's life. But over time, I began to notice the cracks beneath her smile. She had a way of prying into things that weren't hers: my clothes, my personal life, my marriage. She would make little remarks disguised as jokes, like, "Evelyn, you don't really need all that gold, do you? It just sits there, gathering dust. I could put it to better use." I'd laugh awkwardly, brushing it off, but a chill always followed her words. It was 6 years into my marriage when everything unraveled. One afternoon, I came home from work exhausted, the kind of tired that sits deep in your bones. Michael was away on a business trip, and I thought I'd have a quiet evening to myself. But as soon as I opened the bedroom drawer where I kept my wedding gold, my stomach plummeted. The box was gone. I remember how my fingers trembled, yanking out every drawer, pulling clothes to the floor, searching like a mad woman. The jewelry was nowhere. My wedding bangles, my grandmother's necklace, my mother's rings, all vanished. Panic turned into nausea. I collapsed onto the floor, my chest heaving. Those weren't just valuables. They were pieces of my family's soul. I called Michael in tears, and he told me to calm down, that maybe I had misplaced them. But I knew I hadn't. I knew. And then Cassandra came over that evening. She was strangely calm, almost rehearsed, when she said, "Oh, Evelyn, I heard what happened. I saw someone lurking near the house last week. Maybe a thief broke in and took it." She spoke with such certainty, such calculated sympathy, that for a brief moment I almost believed her. But the police found no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no shattered glass, nothing. It was as if the jewelry had simply evaporated. I kept replaying Cassandra's words in my mind. She had been the only one in the house besides me and Michael. She knew where I kept the jewelry. She had asked about it before, and yet she was so quick to point to a thief, as if she had the explanation ready before the question was even asked. The days that followed were filled with silence and suspicion, My mother wept when she heard the news, clutching her chest as though she'd lost her own mother all over again. Daniel, my brother, defended Cassandra, swearing she couldn't possibly have done such a thing. But deep inside, I felt a storm of rage building. I couldn't prove it, but every instinct screamed that she had taken my gold. One night, when I confronted her quietly in the kitchen during a family gathering, I looked her in the eyes and whispered, "Did you take it?" She froze for a fraction of a second, then smirked. That smirk. It still haunts me. She leaned closer and whispered back, "If I did, what could you possibly do about it?" Then she walked away, leaving me trembling with fury. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone what she'd just said, but I knew how it would look. Cassandra was clever, manipulative. She would twist the story, play the victim, make me seem like the paranoid, bitter sister-in-law. I felt trapped in my own silence. The loss of the jewelry wasn't just financial. It was emotional devastation. It was betrayal by blood. I stopped sleeping well, lying awake at night replaying every memory, every interaction with her, wondering how long she had been planning this. Did she look at me on my wedding day and already see those jewels as hers? Did she laugh at my trust, my naivete? Months passed, but the wound stayed raw. Michael urged me to let it go, saying, "It's just jewelry, Evelyn. We can buy new gold." But he didn't understand. You can't buy memories. You can't buy the touch of my grandmother's hand as she clasped that necklace around my throat. You can't buy the sacrifice of my parents, who saved every penny to give me those bangles. And then the truth began to surface, piece by piece, like shards of glass cutting through the fog. A family friend spotted Cassandra at a jeweler's shop, selling what looked suspiciously like antique gold pieces. Another cousin mentioned she'd seen Cassandra wearing bangles that looked identical to mine. Slowly, whispers spread. But every time I tried to bring it up, Cassandra would laugh it off, saying, "Oh, please, Evelyn is just obsessed with me. She wants to blame me for everything." Daniel stood by her side through it all. My own brother. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "You've become so bitter, Evelyn. Why can't you just move on?" His words pierced deeper than any blade. I tried to bury it, to swallow the betrayal and pretend it didn't matter. But each family gathering became unbearable. Each forced smile with Cassandra like poison on my lips. The anger inside me festered until it became something else, something darker. Revenge. I didn't want money back. I didn't even want the gold anymore. I wanted truth. I wanted her mask to shatter in front of everyone. I wanted the world to see her the way I did. Greedy, manipulative, deceitful. And I waited. For years I carried that fire, quietly, watching, listening, waiting for her to slip. And eventually, she did. Because no matter how carefully someone hides their sins, karma always finds a way to drag them into the light. But before that day came, I had to endure more heartbreak than I thought I could survive. And in that heartbreak lay secrets I never knew my family had kept buried. Secrets that would make the stolen gold feel like a mere spark compared to the wildfire that was about to consume us all. I wish I could tell you that time dulled the wound, that the pain of betrayal eventually softened into something manageable. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't fade. It transforms. It seeps into your bones, reshaping the way you look at everyone around you. I stopped trusting easily, even with Michael, even with my parents. It was as though Cassandra's smirk had burned itself into the back of my mind, whispering that love and loyalty were illusions, masks people wore until it suited them to tear them off. The years that followed were filled with moments I should have cherished, but instead carried the heavy shadow of suspicion. Michael and I had our first child, a daughter we named Grace. She was everything I had ever dreamed of. Her laughter a melody, her small hands clutching mine as though I were her entire world. My parents adored her, and for brief moments, holding Grace made me believe I could move forward. But even then, Cassandra's presence loomed. At family gatherings, she would reach for Grace with those long manicured fingers, cooing and showering her with kisses. My stomach always twisted, and I wanted to snatch Grace back, away from her. It wasn't rational, I know. Cassandra wasn't going to harm my child, but it was the sheer audacity of her, the thief of my past, pretending to be part of my daughter's future. It was around Grace's 3rd birthday when the first crack in Cassandra's perfect facade appeared. A mutual family friend, Mrs. Delaney, mentioned casually over coffee that Cassandra had been spending money lavishly on designer bags, expensive vacations, things Daniel's modest income couldn't possibly afford. I tried to brush it off, but a seed of curiosity took root. Where was this sudden wealth coming from? I didn't have to wait long for more signs. At a Christmas party, I noticed Cassandra wearing a necklace that looked hauntingly familiar. My grandmother's necklace, the same one that had vanished from my drawer years ago. A breath caught in my throat as I watched it glint under the lights. I wanted to scream, to rip it off her neck, but instead I forced a smile, my chest burning with fury. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. He had seen it too. Later, when we were alone, he whispered, "That's it, Evelyn. That's your proof. But proof without action is just another torment." And I had no idea yet how deep her deception went. It wasn't until Daniel lost his job that the truth finally began to surface. He came to my parents in desperation, asking for financial help, confessing that he and Cassandra were drowning in debt. My father, always generous, gave them what he could, but my mother's face was tight, her eyes sharp. She had never trusted Cassandra the way I once tried to. Weeks later, I overheard an argument between my parents in their kitchen. My father was begging my mother to stay quiet, but she refused. Her voice broke as she said, "Evelyn deserves to know. She deserves the truth." I froze in the hallway, every nerve in my body trembling. The truth? About what? I walked in slowly, and both of them fell silent. My mother looked at me with tears brimming in her eyes, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then finally she whispered, "Your gold, Evelyn. It wasn't just stolen. Cassandra sold it years ago, and Daniel knew." The words slammed into me like a tidal wave. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. "Daniel knew?" I croaked, my throat dry. My mother nodded, her face etched with pain. "He admitted it to your father when things got bad. He let her sell it because they needed the money. He promised her it would stay between them, that no one would find out." I couldn't breathe. My own brother. The boy I grew up protecting, the one I'd shared secrets with under the covers at night, the one I defended in school when kids bullied him. He had stood by while his wife stripped me of my heritage, my blessings, my family's sacrifice, and then he had helped bury the truth. Rage doesn't even begin to describe what I felt. It was grief, betrayal, and fury fused into something molten, something that could burn me alive if I didn't let it out. I stormed into Daniel's house that night. Cassandra sat on the sofa, sipping wine as though the world owed her comfort. Daniel looked pale when he saw me, his guilt written all over his face. "You knew," I hissed, my voice trembling but sharp enough to cut through the room. "You knew she stole from me. You let her sell my wedding gold." Daniel tried to reach for me, his voice cracking. "Evelyn, please, it wasn't like that." "Don't you dare," I snapped. "Don't you dare twist this. You betrayed me. You both did." Cassandra just smirked, leaning back with that same arrogance I'd seen years before. "It's just gold, Evelyn. Get over it." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't lunge at her. Instead, I felt a chilling calm wash over me. I realized then that revenge wasn't about shouting or fighting. It was about patience. It was about truth finding the light at the right time. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that one day her mask would crumble. The following months were a blur of bitterness and distance. I stopped attending family gatherings when Cassandra was around. My relationship with Daniel fractured beyond repair. My parents, caught in the middle, tried desperately to mend what was broken, but some wounds run too deep to heal with apologies. And then, when I thought the storm had settled into silence, karma made its move. Cassandra's spending spiraled out of control. She began borrowing money from family friends, spinning stories about emergencies and investments. Eventually, the whispers grew too loud to ignore. People started asking questions. And then came the day that shattered her carefully crafted facade. A knock on my parents' door from the police. Cassandra had been caught trying to pawn off more stolen jewelry, this time not mine, but from another relative. She had woven her web so wide she couldn't keep track of her own lies anymore. I watched as the news spread through the family, watched as Daniel's face turned from blind loyalty to horror. For years he had defended her, stood by her side, but in the end, the truth burned brighter than any love she pretended to give. When Cassandra was arrested, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sorrow. Triumph, because the mask had finally fallen. Sorrow, because in her downfall, I also saw the ruin of my brother, the boy who had once been my closest ally. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but betrayal has a way of leaving echoes. Even in her disgrace, Cassandra's poison lingered, tearing at the fabric of my family. Daniel begged me to forgive him, to see that he had been blinded by love, manipulated by her. And though a part of me wanted to cling to my rage forever, another part, the part shaped by my daughter's innocent eyes, knew that I had to decide what kind of woman I would be. Would I let betrayal define me forever? Or would I take the shards of my broken trust and use them to build something stronger? At that time, I didn't know the answer. All I knew was that the fire of revenge inside me had shifted. I had waited years to see Cassandra fall, and now that she had, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, but little did I know. There were still secrets left to uncover, secrets buried so deeply that when they rose to the surface, they would force me to question everything I thought I knew about my family, my marriage, and myself. When Cassandra was finally taken away in handcuffs, I thought the chapter was closed. For years I had dreamed of seeing her mask torn away in front of everyone, and there it was, her arrogance replaced by shame, her lies exposed. Yet standing there, watching Daniel pale and trembling, I realized something I hadn't expected. Revenge is never clean. It doesn't wash away the wounds. It just reopens them in a different shape. I couldn't bring myself to rejoice. Not when I saw my brother's face. Daniel was shattered. His life with Cassandra had unraveled completely, and he was left with nothing but debts, disgrace, and a hollow shell of the marriage he had defended with such blind loyalty. A part of me wanted to scream at him, to make him feel every ounce of pain I had carried all these years. But another part, the part that still remembered the boy who used to sit beside me under the stars and whisper his fears, ached for him. Still, I couldn't forgive him. Not yet. Weeks turned into months, and the family slowly tried to settle into a new rhythm. Cassandra's name became taboo, a shadow that hovered over every gathering. But even in her absence, she had left behind seeds of poison. Relatives gossiped in hushed tones, neighbors whispered, and Daniel withdrew further into himself. My parents aged overnight, their once proud shoulders now bent under the weight of disgrace. It was during this time that I began digging. Maybe it was the unresolved anger. Maybe it was curiosity. But I found myself unable to stop searching through the fragments Cassandra had left behind. I checked with jewelers, pawn shops, even acquaintances she'd been close to. And that's when I stumbled upon something I never expected. One jeweler, a kind older man with a thick mustache, pulled out a ledger when I asked if Cassandra had sold him anything. He flipped through the pages, then looked up at me with hesitant eyes.
"She came here often,"
he admitted.
"But she didn't always come alone."
My heart stilled. What do you mean? He hesitated before sliding the book toward me.
Sometimes she came with your husband.
Michael. For a moment, I thought the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. I stared at the ledger, at Michael's name scribbled in black ink beside Cassandra's. The world blurred, and I felt as though I were underwater, unable to breathe. When I returned home that night, I confronted him. Michael's face went pale, his lips parting but no words coming out. I demanded the truth, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Finally, he broke, his eyes brimming with shame. "Yes," he whispered. "I went with her."
But it wasn't what you think. She told me you wanted to sell some of the jewelry, that you needed money for Grace's medical bills when she was a baby.
I staggered back, my chest heaving. "How could you believe that? How could you think I would sell my grandmother's necklace without even telling you?" Michael buried his face in his hands. "I was desperate, Evelyn. Grace was sick, you remember? The hospital bills were piling up, and I thought you were just too proud to admit you needed help. Cassandra said she'd take care of it quietly." Tears blurred my vision. Betrayal upon betrayal. Not just from Cassandra, but from the man I had trusted with my life. He had walked into the lion's den hand in hand with her, blind to the truth, blind to me. The fury that erupted inside me was volcanic. I screamed, I wept, I hurled accusations into the night air until my throat was raw. Michael begged me to understand, to see that he had been manipulated, that his love for me and Grace had made him foolish. But how could I? How could I forgive the man who had stood beside my betrayer and helped her strip me of the very symbols of my family's love? For days, I couldn't even look at him. I shut myself away, replaying every memory, every moment that now seemed tainted. I thought of the nights he held me as I cried over the missing gold, of the promises he made to stand by me no matter what. And all the while, he had carried a piece of the secret inside him, even if he claimed it was born of ignorance. But as much as I hated him in those moments, a cruel truth gnawed at me. Cassandra had planned it this way. She hadn't just wanted my gold, she wanted my trust, my marriage, my very foundation, and she had nearly succeeded. I was torn apart, caught between rage and sorrow, love and loathing. My parents urged me to think carefully, to remember the man Michael had been before Cassandra slithered into our lives. My mother, with her weary eyes, said quietly, "Sometimes betrayal isn't born of malice, Evelyn. Sometimes it's born of weakness. Only you can decide which one you're living with." Those words haunted me. I watched Michael in the weeks that followed, saw the way he tried to rebuild, to prove himself again. He sold his car to pay off debts, took extra shifts, and devoted himself to Grace with a kind of desperation that made my heart ache. I wanted to hate him, but every time I saw him kneeling to tie our daughter's shoes or staying up late to rock her back to sleep, the fury inside me tangled with something else. Love. Fragile, broken, but still there. Meanwhile, Daniel crumbled. Without Cassandra, he was lost, drowning in regret. One night he came to me, his eyes bloodshot, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I should have protected you. I should have stopped her. But I was weak. She knew how to twist me." I looked at him for a long time, remembering the boy I once loved more than anyone in the world. My heart wanted to forgive him, but my scars wouldn't let me. "You weren't weak," I whispered. "You were complicit. And that's something you'll carry forever." He fell to his knees, sobbing. But I turned away. I thought that was the end, that the wounds had all been revealed, the betrayals laid bare. But life has a way of saving the deepest cut for last. A month later, as I was cleaning through old boxes in my parents' attic, I found a letter. It was sealed, yellowed with age, and addressed to me in my grandmother's delicate handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside, her words unraveled a secret that shattered everything I thought I knew. The gold had never been meant just for me. In her letter, my grandmother confessed that she had left the jewelry to be shared between me and Daniel. She had trusted me, as the elder sibling, to guard it until we both married.
I dropped the letter, my breath catching. All these years I had believed the jewelry was mine alone. But Daniel, had he known? Had Cassandra known? Or had they simply taken what they felt entitled to?
The revelation shook me to my core. The betrayal was still real, still vicious, but now it was tangled with guilt. Had I misunderstood my grandmother's gift all along? Had my obsession with vengeance blinded me to the possibility that Daniel's claim, however twisted, had roots in truth? I didn't know what to do with that knowledge. I only knew that it added another layer to the storm that already raged inside me. The letter slipped from my fingers and drifted onto the attic floor, like a feather weighted with grief. I sat there, my back pressed against an old cedar chest, my heart hammering. For years I had lived in righteous anger, so sure of my place as the victim, the wrong sister, the betrayed wife. But those faded words in my grandmother's handwriting threatened to unravel the story I had been clinging to. The jewelry had never been meant solely for me. It was meant for both of us, Daniel and me, symbols of heritage to be shared. My grandmother had trusted me as the elder to safeguard it until the time was right. I had never known. No one had told me. And now I was left wondering, had Daniel known? Or had Cassandra merely seized upon something neither of us fully understood? Guilt slithered into my chest, twisting with the fury and sorrow I had carried for so long. I remembered the way my mother's face crumpled when I told her the gold was gone. The way Daniel looked at me when I accused Cassandra. The way Michael had admitted to being duped into helping. Suddenly, I wasn't standing on solid ground anymore. I was sinking, every memory tilting under this new weight. For days, I couldn't bring myself to confront anyone. I locked the letter away, as though hiding it could erase what it meant. But the knowledge pulsed inside me, refusing to be silenced. Finally, I went to see my parents. I placed the letter on the kitchen table, and my mother's hand shook as she read it. My father closed his eyes, his jaw tight. "I thought you knew," my mother whispered. "I thought you understood it was for both of you. That's why we never spoke of it outright." I felt the room spin. How could I understand something no one ever told me? "You gave it to me on my wedding day. You put it in my hands." How was I supposed to think it wasn't mine? Tears filled her eyes. "We wanted you to keep it safe." Daniel was still finding his way. We thought when the time came, you would do what was right. The sting of those words cut deeper than any betrayal. My grandmother had trusted me. My parents had trusted me. And I had failed. I hadn't even known the full story before letting bitterness consume me. But still, even with this new truth, I couldn't excuse what Cassandra had done. Stealing, selling, deceiving, those were her choices. Daniel's silence, Michael's complicity, they were choices too. And none of them were mine. That night I sat with Michael after Grace was asleep. I told him about the letter. His face was pale, his voice hushed. "So it wasn't yours alone?" he asked carefully. "It doesn't change what happened," I snapped. The words sharper than I intended, then softer. "But it changes me. I don't know how to carry this anymore." Michael reached for my hand, his grip tentative. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe this isn't just about what was stolen. Maybe it's about what we do with the truth now." His words lingered, but forgiveness did not come easily. My marriage was cracked, fragile, and every look between us carried the weight of what we had endured. Yet, beneath it all, there was still a thread connecting us, frayed but not broken. As for Daniel, I avoided him for weeks. But he showed up one evening, unannounced, his eyes hollow. He held no arrogance, no excuses, only exhaustion. "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything," he said, his voice hoarse. "But I need you to read this." He handed me a crumpled envelope. Inside was a letter written in his own shaky handwriting. He confessed everything. How Cassandra had manipulated him. How he had convinced himself that since the jewelry was meant for both of us, he wasn't betraying me by letting her sell it. How he had drowned in shame but lacked the courage to tell me. "I thought I was protecting her," he admitted. but I wasn't protecting anyone. Not her, not you, not myself. I wanted to throw the letter back in his face, to scream that no apology could erase the years of pain. But as I looked at him, broken and pleading, I realized something that startled me. Revenge no longer felt satisfying. I had seen Cassandra fall. I had watched Daniel's life collapse under the weight of her lies. And yet, here I was, still hollow. I thought about Grace, about the kind of mother I wanted to be for her. Did I want to teach her that bitterness is a home you can live in forever? Or did I want to show her that even in the ruins of betrayal, it's possible to build something new? So I told Daniel, my voice steady, though my heart trembled, I can't forget what you did. And I don't know if I'll ever forgive you, but I also can't keep letting this poison consume me. For Grace, for myself, I won't carry this rage any longer. He wept, shoulders shaking, but I didn't comfort him. It wasn't my role anymore. That was his burden to carry. In the months that followed, the family tried to piece itself back together. The whispers about Cassandra faded as newer scandals replaced them in the community. Michael and I worked quietly on healing our marriage, though trust is not something rebuilt in a day. There were nights I still woke up with the image of him, standing beside Cassandra in that jeweler's shop, and those nights left me cold and distant. But there were also mornings when he held Grace with such tenderness that I found myself daring to believe in him again. And slowly, ever so slowly, the rage inside me softened. Not into forgiveness, at least not yet, but into something that felt closer to peace. One summer evening, I sat with my parents in their garden, watching Grace chase fireflies. My mother turned to me, her eyes tired but warm. You've carried so much pain, Evelyn. More than anyone should. But look at her, your daughter. She is your gold now, your inheritance, your treasure. I followed her gaze to Grace, who was laughing, her hair glinting in the fading light, and I realized my mother was right. The jewelry was gone. The betrayal had cut deep, but my life, my true wealth, was still here, beating in the small, innocent heart of the child who called me Mom. In that moment, I understood something I wish I had known years ago. Revenge can burn away everything if you let it, but love is what survives. So I made a choice. I chose to put down the weight I had been carrying, to let the scars be scars rather than open wounds. I chose to live not defined by betrayal, but by the lessons it carved into me. That trust must be guarded. That silence can be as cruel as lies, but also that resilience is born in the ashes of heartbreak. This is my story. A story of betrayal, revenge, and karma. But more than that, it is a story of survival, of finding light again even after the deepest darkness. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever carried wounds you thought would never heal, I want you to know this. Your worth is not in what was taken from you, but in what you choose to build after. If my story touched you, please share your own experiences in the comments below. Share this video so others carrying the same pain know they are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, don't forget to follow this channel. Together, maybe we can turn our scars into something meaningful.